JoAn that church has started. She's in the office. Yeah.
Good morning. Can you all just take a breath with me today? And all of you out there in our virtual sanctuary, take a breath with me too. Courage, respect, wisdom, a new way of thinking, change. These are but a few of the discoveries made on my exploration of my heart. I almost waited too long, almost. I was working, raising our then elementary school-aged daughter, and being a wife. I didn't have time to listen to my heart or my inner voice that was calling out for fulfillment. I was fulfilled enough. I had a great job, a beautiful daughter, and a loving husband, living the dream. Yet there was this whispering in my ear, sometimes a feeling of yearning in my being coming from deep within. What was it? But I pressed on with my life as it was. As an advocate, I raced to the battlefield to stand up for what was right, demand the recognition and respect of those who were overlooked or ignored. I was blazing a path of righteousness where discrimination tried to grow like kudzu. I soothed the daughter that was frustrated with the false limitations imposed on her for the sake of abiding by someone else's rule or rules. I loved and stood by my husband, encouraging him to continue to search for and embrace experiences that brought him joy in his reboot of his life, living the dream. Ultimately, I was faced with an unplanned medical retirement that upended my dream, or upended the dream. My heart, my physical heart broke. It tore in several places, otherwise known as a heart attack at age 44. The doctor explored my heart to find that there was no cause for this, no blockage, no random things flying around in my heart and my arteries. But he said the remedy was to quit living the dream. I was supposed to give up the stress of an adversarial job, the worry of my child growing up the right way, and release my envy cloaked in admiration of my husband, who is brave enough to pursue what is new, different, and challenging. How was I supposed to do that? So counseling and looking inward were the answers. Counseling is a way for me to go escorted into those experiences that were painful and interpreted as a need to protect myself from everyone and everything, to recognize that this one life I have is a process of growth. Taking this difficult journey towards discovering the acceptance doesn't mean taking this difficult journey towards discovering that acceptance doesn't mean oppressed, allowed me to find the authentic joy and strength in my heart, both metaphorically and physically. I discovered that my joy and strength is to be an agent of change who doesn't see advocacy and adversary as being synonymous. My journey put me on the path to become a certified spiritual director. I'm learning and practicing what my cardiologist daughter, and husband already knew, and you probably knew this too, that the inner voice or undefined yearning lurking within us is beckoning us to explore our heart's desire. It is inspiration asking us to respect our callings, seek the wisdom of thinking in a new way, to live our lives according to our principles. Yes, it may be challenging, but the courage to seek the change within is far better than literally dying or metaphorically withering away of a broken heart in this world. Don't you agree? I invite you to take time to explore your heart. It might be a good idea also for you to talk to your physician about your physical heart too. Come now, let us worship together.
This morning, we're going to talk about the adventure of exploring within and what that means for you, which may mean sitting in your shadows, or it may mean changing your lifestyle, or it may mean standing on Wilshire Boulevard with a placard screaming your lungs out because your heart has called you to a particular place. And so I light the chalice this morning as we receive the invitation to explore what's in our hearts.
Son los cantos de tierras nacidos en un recuerdo, amigos de divinos que parten para no volver. Son los cantos de mi tierra, los cantos nacidos en un recuerdo por los caminos de tiempos que parten para no volver. Soñando siempre con tus dulces besos, estoy en lo más tierno de mi corazón, y todo fue más hermoso bajo el cielo de mi ilusión. Pero un día yo partí por caminos ignorados, buscando otros ojos, buscando otro amor. Y en los ojos me quedan recuerdos de esos ojos, para cantarlos en mi soledad. Pero un día yo partí por caminos ignorados, buscando otros ojos, buscando otro amor. Y en los ojos me quedan recuerdos de esos ojos, para cantarlos en mi
not 44 anymore. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Santa Monica. I'm JoAn Peters, your worship associate for today. We're delighted to have all of you present with us, wherever you are, here in the sanctuary or in our online sanctuary, from communities across the LA Basin and around the United States and beyond. We're glad you're here. If you're new to our community, you can find many ways to learn more about our community and become involved on our website. Please know that while we navigate our new normal, we are gathering safely and slightly differently, and also still holding many meetings and small group gatherings online. We offer programs to serve the needs of our congregation and to be of service to the larger world, including broad religious exploration and personal development for people of all ages. We also join with our social justice advocates to work for justice and harmony of our world. Unitarian Universalism is not defined by creed or dogma, but is guided by principles that affirm the worth and dignity of every person. They also encourage an individual search for truth and meaning. Our beliefs are drawn from scripture and science, nature and philosophy, personal experience, and ancient traditions. We are an open, affirming, and welcoming congregation, diverse in backgrounds, identities, spiritualities, and philosophies of life. We are united in our desire to create an inclusive, beloved community, to live the principles of our faith, and to serve the wider world. Whatever your beliefs or faith tradition, we invite you to help us build a community where together, in our diversity, we may covenant in love and justice. You may find comfort, camaraderie, and inspiration here. As we gather in this space and in our virtual spaces, we recognize that we are connected with one another through the winds that give air to all beings, through the waters that move deep into the earth and up to the sky. We acknowledge the ground beneath our feet and is always and has been, and it is and always has been the home of Indigenous peoples. Many of whom have been forcibly removed from other lands. Announcements. During this month, the project, the Arizona lobby area, including the restrooms on the first and second floors, will be blocked and inaccessible. Therefore, the only restrooms available on our campus are the 3 in the cottage and the 1 in the sanctuary lobby. We apologize for the temporary inconvenience caused by the construction, and we appreciate everyone's understanding. This month's artist featured on our art wall is our own Betty Barkley. One of these. Please stroll by, admire, and purchase a work of art. Our facilitator training is happening. The Our Whole Lives, otherwise known as OWL, is hosting a teacher training for grades 7 through 9 and 10 through 12, right here at UUSM. We need more people trained up so we can offer this life-saving and enriching class to our kids and our community's kids beyond our walls. If you are interested in becoming an OWL teacher, please contact your youth RE or RSVP on the new website. Kudos to the Women's Plus and other volunteers for making our first Friday game night for children and their parents such a success. There was lots of food and fun and games and visiting by a giant tortoise named Mo. We had more than a dozen kids and their families in attendance, both from within our community and outside. And regarding the Spirit Level Foundation matching grant, thanks to a very generous donation of $35,000 from one of our members, we have been able to raise a total of $38,511, probably a little bit more this week, towards the grant for the Arizona lobby. We still need about $11,000 of the $50,000 to match what will make us eligible for the grant. We would like to encourage our members and friends to help us reach our goal of $50,000. Contributions of any amount will help. Please rise in body or spirit for the opening hymn of our covenant. Number 44, We Sing of Golden Morning. Ages will be with Jackie Weber and friends? And friends. Oh, thank you. And if you have any donations for Westside Food Bank, please bring them up and put them in the basket, or ask one of the kids that comes by. Thank you. Thank you, Cassie.
Hello, 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 hello. Can I sit between you guys? Is that cool? All right. This morning we're going to read a story about kind of adventure and a kind of exploring. And some of you may relate to some parts of it, and some of you may relate to others. And Zia, since you've already read this with me, I'm going to ask you to turn the pages while I read. Okay. And it's going to take a little effort so we don't go too slow. So like, all right. She was called What Are You? And she lived there in that in that shallow hole of the earth. She was the only one, and she didn't know where she came from. She did not know her name either, but now and then a creature would come upon her and say, "What are you?" What Are You didn't know how to answer this question, so she would ask it back, "What are you?" And the creatures would tell their tales. "What am I? I'm the rabbit. In the beginning, the first gardener was digging a hole to plant his cabbages. He dug too deep and hit the very center of the world, and you know what popped out? Rabbits. Now my people hop all over the earth." Wow, thought What Are You? What am I? I am the wren, queen of the hedge. In the beginning, my people were as large as trees and ruled the world. Our size has grown smaller, but not our might. Magnificent, thought What Are You? What am I? I'm the wolf. In the beginning, my people were born in moonlight. Now we run and hunt together, and at night we sing our thanks to the heavens. Wondrous, thought What Are You? What would be more wondrous, though, was if What Are You could share her own story. Every day, creatures large and small regaled her with their tales: the bullfrog, the fox, the elephant, the honeybee, the tortoise, and finally the great whale, oldest and wisest of them all. One night, What Are You looked up at the moon. What am I? Who are my people? Where did I come from? Surely I have a story too. But the moon did not know either. The next morning, What Are You started walking and did not stop. Her friends had all come from someplace else. What if What Are You could find where she came from? Maybe her story would be waiting there. I will search far and wide, she said to herself. I will go all the way to the very beginning of the world if I have to. What Are You journeyed under tall trees, through dense grass, and over rolling hills. She walked until she could walk no more. So she swam. On strange shores, she found a creature she had never seen before. I am the dodo. I have seen many suns rise and set over these islands, but I have never seen a creature like you. What is your story? I don't know, said What Are You, but I will soon. What Are You continued on over rising terrain until she reached mountains too tall to climb. So she dug. Deep into the earth, she found a creature she had never seen before. I am called the dragon, the terrible lizard, and many other names. My bones are spread far and wide through this earth, but I have never seen a creature like you. What is your story? I don't know, said What Are You, but I will very soon. What Are You continued on, deep and deeper still, until it was so dark she could no longer see, so she closed her eyes. When she opened them, there was a tiny, very tiny light. She crawled toward it and found a creature she had never seen before. I am the protozoan, it said to her. I have been here since the beginning. I've seen it all, more than I can ever tell. But I've not seen a creature like you. Oh, said What Are You? You have come a very long way to find me. Tell me, have you discovered what you're searching for? Not yet, but I think I'm getting close now. What Are You walked farther and farther than she had ever walked, and the land grew sparser than it had ever grown. I am coming to the very beginning of the world, she thought. My story must be over that last hill. What Are You climbed the hill and came down to the other side, but there was no story there. All What Are You found was a shallow hole. Her shallow hole. She had come right back to where she had started. Sad and tired, What Are You curled up. Just as she was falling asleep, she heard her name. What are you? Her friends surrounded her. Here it is, she thought, what are you? The same old question. They will all ask her what she is, and she will have to confess, I don't know. I don't know what I am or where I came from. Perhaps I come from nowhere. Perhaps I'm nothing. But before she could say these things, her friends asked questions What Are You had not heard before. Are you all right? Where did you go? What did you see? What did you hear? For none of them had traveled as far or as long as What Are You? So What Are You told them about her adventures, how far she had walked, swam, dug, and crawled, about the creatures she had met, strange, terrible, and wonderful, and how her long journey over hills, oceans, and under mountains had finally brought her home. At the end, her friends were very quiet, taking it all in. Then the whale, the oldest and wisest of them all, said, Now what are you? That is a wondrous story indeed. The creatures nodded. Tell it again. So, Zia, let me ask you a question. Why do you think I picked this story, or what do you think it means?
I think it means that everybody is different, basically.
Everybody's different. That's good. Everybody's different. And some of us have stories about who we are, and some of us need to create our stories step by step. I think that is what I take away from it. I personally am adopted, and I never knew who my parents were, my birth parents, and so I always wondered what my story was. And only after lots and lots of searching have I come to realize that I make my story every day by what I do. That's what I got.
Please join me in singing our Song of Blessing, which is hymn number 413 in your gray hymnal. It's a little different, the words, so be sure to look at the words on our screen here if you remember it. Would you guys like to join me up?
This morning, I invite our friend and member, Gila Narus, to come and share something from her heart and from our world.
Good morning, everyone. As many of you know what is going on in Iran. About 3 weeks ago, a 22-year-old young woman got arrested by the so-called morality police. And they took her to the police station because her dress code was not precisely exact dress code that government expect. After 15 hours, they handed her dead body to her family. It's almost 40 years this method of harassment and interrogation practiced in Iran. People protest and their complaint are nipped in the bud. This time, her death was like a spark, ignited and rekindled the fire that has been sleeping under the ashes for many years. Within days, women and men came out to the street and called her name, Mahsa Amini, Mahsa Amini. And some women bravely took their scarves off. Some burned them and dropped them in the fire pit. They are demanding real change. As I am speaking, they are still protesting nights and days. And they are being attacked brutally. They get injured, they get shot at, and they get arrested by hundreds. But they are not giving up. University students, even high school students, are joining them. We don't know how many have been killed or got arrested because of internet disruption. Yes, each human being has their own unique and readable story. For over 40 years, many of these stories remains unfinished. Women from Iran and Afghanistan are dying without any claim. These women are not politicians, nor they are riding in an empty train of the politician. Despite their educational background and potential, they are tired of being forced to live in a tight cages of 1,000 years old. At least in Iran, this is the means for the government to control Iranian people so they can stay in power. Let us recognize them and understand them. Let's not be indifferent to their struggle. I am sure many of you heard their main slogan, women, life, freedom. Yes, women, life, freedom. In the Iranian language, Zan, Zendegi, Azadi. This is the voice of many millions of women around the world. Let us hear their cries. They are standing for what is so human and fundamental. Women's right is human right. Please be the voice of these powerful women and show your solidarity. You can hashtag her name, Mahsa Amini. You can contact the Amnesty International, and however way you could choose to help, please help. Thank you. I would like to chant, as I taught maybe with Kikanza, their slogan. So if you would like to chat it with me. Oh, I'm sorry. I would like to chant their slogan in Persian, and I appreciate it if you could chant it with me. Zan, zendegi, azadi. Zan, zendegi, azadi. Zan, zendegi, azadi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gila. Once more, Zendegi Azadi, women, life, freedom. So as we acknowledge this tremendous joy in women finding their power and tremendous sorrow and that they have to pay such a high price for speaking out, let us remember also the joys and sorrows that you have brought by taking a moment of silence as we offer up our thoughts, our prayers, sharing in the community of the world, shining light on these things that are so important to not only our lives, but the lives of our daughters and our sons. I didn't introduce myself. I am Kikanza Nuri-Robins. I am your consulting minister, and I am your preacher this morning, and I'm so happy to be with you. Our reading this morning is from someone that many of you know, Brené Brown. She says that you may not have signed up for a hero's journey, but the second that you fell down, got your butt kicked, suffered a disappointment, screwed up, or felt your heart break, it started. It doesn't matter whether we are ready for an emotional adventure, hurt happens. And it happens to every single one of us, without exception. The only decision we get to make is what role we'll play in our own lives. Do we write the story, or do we want to hand that power over to someone else? Choosing to write our own story means getting uncomfortable. It's choosing courage over comfort. When Western civilizations tell their stories, they speak of their explorations and discoveries. They imply or they grandly state that nothing and no one of import existed until they arrived. In elementary school, we learned about friendly Indians who were waiting to be discovered, who introduced pumpkin spice to the Pilgrims. In high school or college, we learned that Christopher Columbus didn't discover America, he actually was lost. Sometimes great things happen when we are lost. As a kid, whenever we suspected that my mother didn't actually know where she was going when she was driving, and we say, "Mom, we're lost," and she would say, "No, we're not lost. We're having an adventure." And she was right in that we ultimately discovered places and people that we hadn't known before. I learned my way around Los Angeles by having those kinds of adventures. Remember the Thomas Guide and the AAA maps? I had stacks of them in my glove compartment. Unfortunately, I usually conferred with them after I had found my way home to see where I had been. But they were tremendous adventures, and I did really get to know Los Angeles well and how to get around. So I wonder where you have lost yourself, or if you have lost yourself, or if you even know that part of yourself was lost. I wonder where you have gone exploring. Some folks like to explore into the future by studying the skies and all that's up there. They're really into space travel, watching the astronauts go to the moon and beyond. I've been enjoying the newest photos from the James Webb Telescope. They are absolutely phenomenal. They remind me of the concept of fractals, and that in a fractal, the smallest portion of this larger thing looks like the larger thing. Think broccoli or cauliflower. You take off a tiny piece of cauliflower, and it just looks like a miniature giant cauliflower. Well, when I look at these space photos, they look to me like the cells of plants and animals or humans. So exploration can go lots of places. Exploration on Earth includes places like Antarctica, deep into the oceans, and deep, deep, deep into the earth, like if you're trying to dig your way to China, into caves. I read a book called Shibumi many years ago, and I've read it several times because it's on my top 10 list of favorites. It's by an author called Trevanian, Shibumi, S-H-I-B-U-M-I. I recommend it. It's a wonderful adventure story and a fascinating character study. And one of the side stories, what I love about fiction is that you read about the plot line, but there are all these other stories that give you opportunities to learn new things. And I learned about spelunking, cave exploration. So one of the newest caves and most extraordinary caves that has been discovered on our Earth is the Son Doong Cave in Vietnam. It's a giant cave. It's supposed to be the largest cave passage in the world. It's about 4 miles long. That's the distance, say, between here and UCLA. It is 656 feet high, which is about the height of a 50-story building. From here to UCLA, 50 stories high, pretty darn big. So big that most trips into the cave last 5 to 7 days. It has its own climate, its own ecosystem. It's got a jungle, it's got a rainforest. It's a fascinating place. And it has a very small opening. It was discovered about 30 years ago by a farmer who fell into the hole. And he found his way out after a couple of days, and then went to tell people about this extraordinary place that he had found. But the opening was so small and so protected, he couldn't find it. It took 20 years before people could actually find the cave again. So imagine the courage it took to explore. Imagine what it would be like to walk through a door into a completely different world. See, many people who like global exploration like to go places where they can walk in the steps of their ancestors or the early explorers. They walk into the past with imagination and with courage. They walk into the present, into space, into deep caves with trepidation and courage. And then there are those of us who engage in internet exploration, and we fall down Google holes looking at news and images and humor and sometimes real information. Then some of you might know, or you might be an adrenaline junkie who chase extraordinary moments, jumping out of airplanes, climbing the sides of cliffs, walking on the edge of the earth. That too takes a lot of courage. And then there are those who have the courage to take the journey inward, exploring inner space, the unexplored, unsettled areas of your heart. It takes courage to look at your shadow, remembering that darkness doesn't destroy the light, it defines it. That the inner recesses of relationships are found as we explore the shadows of our heart. We are able to tackle unfinished work, the truth-telling that needs to be done, apologizing, forgiving, setting boundaries, honoring untapped passions, doing the things that your heart wants you to do. Explorations of the heart answer the question, what's next? What's left? What now? Explorations of the heart include legacy work, considering the footprints that you're going to leave behind for others, recognizing that your life is limited and you have choices, which means that you have the opportunity to rearrange priorities, to scratch things off your bucket list, to place them on your effort list, to assess relationships, to ask the questions, who do you need to make more time for? Who do you need to unfriend? Whose expectations need to be managed or adjusted? Whose calls do you need to block or deny for today? See, the hardest part of relationship exploration is asking yourself the question, what do you need to accept? It is absolutely true that you are the master of your fate and you control your destiny. And it is also absolutely true that there are many things that you cannot control and you cannot change. And often those are the things that we rail against and fight and fight and fight, trying to change what can't be changed. It's like trying to teach a pig to sing. It wastes your time and it annoys the pig. So think about, what do you really need to accept? You know what someone needs to do. How long before you accept that they're just not going to do it? I can fix a number of lives. Just step right up. I'll tell you what you need to do. But I have to accept the fact that you have to want to change, and you have to want to do the work, and I have to accept whatever choice you make. Explorations of the heart require courage to ask for what you want, courage to forgive yourself for being human, courage to fortify your boundaries, courage to take down walls that no longer serve you, courage to acknowledge your story is incomplete, is flawed, or just plain wrong. We talk about creating safe spaces. Brené Brown suggests that we should work on creating brave spaces. Owning our story and loving ourselves through that process is the bravest thing that we will ever do, she says. So brave spaces in groups mean that there's some vulnerability. There's a willingness to be wrong, a willingness to fail, a willingness to be surprised, a willingness to be hurt. And there is graciousness. So you're vulnerable and you're gracious, understanding that mistakes serve a purpose. If we didn't make mistakes, we wouldn't learn much. We'd think we knew everything there was to know. And that making mistakes, the purpose that they serve is beyond shame and embarrassment. So our job is not to point our finger at folks who have erred, to shame and embarrass them, but to see what we can learn about ourselves as they learn from their mistakes. We've got to have the right perspectives when we're working in groups. This is why group work is so hard, recognizing our biases, recognizing the biases of the group that no one in the group sees. Leaning into the fear, acknowledging our insecurities and our uncertainties and the past hurts. I know some people in this congregation who won't come to a small group or won't even come to worship anymore because they got hurt 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and they don't want to be hurt again. And so it takes work. It takes work to explore who you are. It takes work to explore who we are. And it requires that we pay attention and move with intention as we do this work. So the brave space in relationships requires all that we just said, plus thinking through to the words of encouragement that you can offer to a loved one. Thinking about how you can shepherd a friend or a lover onto a path that they need to take, but which they look at with some fear. Deciding what you need to say when you can see how all the dots are connected, but they can't see it yet. And then there's creating the brave space with yourself, sitting in your own mess. What can you say to yourself as you look around you and say, this is not comfortable, nor is it pretty? One way to start is to think, what is the most loving thing that anyone has ever said to you? Starting with your mom or your dog. You may have to move all the way into yesterday. But what is the most loving thing that anyone has ever said to you? A friend said to me, maybe 20 years ago, she said, Kikanza, there is nothing that you can do to make me stop loving you. Whoa. So what is the most loving thing someone has said to you? Here's the work. Can you say that to yourself? Can you say that to yourself? Will you say that to yourself? It takes courage. It takes courage to explore the depths of your heart. I spoke to a young woman recently whose marriage is crumbling. He won't change, she said. Well, neither do you. You are enabling the same behaviors that you say hurt you. When he does something that's unacceptable, you make excuses for him. He asks you a question and you don't tell him your truth. There are no consequences for what he does or doesn't do. You asked for a divorce, went to the bathroom, cried, came out and told him that you changed your mind. He didn't have to do anything except keep watching the game. Heart work is hard work. What calls you to explore your heart? What do you already know but won't acknowledge? What do you really want? What do you choose not to change? You can face the truth about what you want, or you can remain in this liminal state of tolerable unhappiness. See, because if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you got. Explorations of the heart get stalled because you're afraid, oh, it's going to hurt, it's going to kill me. It's not going to kill you. But since we are all going to die anyway, you can choose to die free, knowing what's there in your heart, because to live in fear, to live in denial, is to live a half life. Now, in our gray hymnals in the readings, number 587 is a poem by Audre Lorde. And she says, when the sun rises, we are afraid it might not remain. When the sun sets, we are afraid it might not rise in the morning. When our stomachs are full, we are afraid of indigestion. When our stomachs are empty, we are afraid we may never eat again. When we are loved, we are afraid love will vanish. When we are alone, we are afraid love will never return. And when we speak, we are afraid our words will not be heard nor welcomed. But when we are silent, we are still afraid. So it is better to speak remembering we were never meant to survive. We aren't meant to survive, but we are meant to live. What does your heart want? Where do you need to go exploring? What does your heart need to live? Are you willing to explore the possibilities found in your heart? I hope so.
Wow. Our practice is to dedicate 50% of our non-pledged Sunday offering and is used to support the life of our church. And the other 50% goes to organizations doing work in the world that advance our Unitarian Universalist principles. This month, half of our Sunday offering will go to Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice, CLUE. And the other half will be used to support the life of CLUE and the church. CLUE is a powerful coalition of diverse congregations with a progressive agenda and the workers' rights and issues of economic justice. Clergy and lay people involved in this work to occupy a very specific place with the larger social justice landscape calling on religious communities, humanity in all walks of life, inspiration and support, and counter messaging. You may donate by text, online with our website, or by check. To donate by text, call 844-982-0209 with the amount of the fund for the donation. For example, you would text the $sign and 10 GCC for a $10 donation to the Generous Congregation Fund, or SLF, for the Spirit Level Foundation. For text donations, a one-time only credit card registration is required. All that you give monetarily, especially all that you give of yourselves, help to build our community. Thank you for your generosity. I invite our ushers to come forward, who will now give and receive this morning's offering. We will now give and receive this morning's offering. Before we have our solo I'd like to remind you of a few things about the coming song. CBC, a Canadian radio station, said about Bahare that if you don't, translates as because of or for the sake of, and its lyrics are drawn from the social media posts of people protesting the death of Masha Amini, who died in the custody of Iran's morality police after being arrested and allegedly beaten for wearing an improper hijab. Also in the United States, on NPR, Melissa Harris Perry's guest on The Takeaway said that even if you don't understand the lyrics and the language, we can listen to the tone of the voice and the longing that it translates to our hearts.
Testing, hello. Good morning. So I want a quick annotation. Being half Persian, this cause is personal for me as the regime has affected my family for as long as I can remember. But I encourage all of you to spread the word about this in whatever way possible. In order for real change to occur, the Iranian people need the support of the world. And it doesn't feel like we're at that point yet, so. برای توی کوچه رقصیدن، برای ترسیدن به وقت بوسیدن، برای خواهرم خواهرت خواهرامون، برای تغییر مغزا که پوسیدن، برای شرمندگی، برای بی پولی، برای حضرت یک زندگی معمولی، برای کودک سبالگرد و آرزوهاش، برای این اقتصاد دستوری، برای این هوای آلوده، برای ولیعصر و درختای فرسوده، برای پیروز و احتمال انقراضش، برای سگهای بیگناه ممنوعه، برای گریه های بیوقفه، برای تصویر تکرار این لحظه، برای چهره‌ای که میخنده، برای دانش آموزها، برای آینده، برای این بهشت اجباری، برای نخبه های زندانی، برای کودکان افغانی، برای این همه، برای غیر تکراری، برای این همه شعارهای تو خالی، برای آوار خانه های پوشالی، برای احساس آرامش، برای خورشید پس از شبای طولانی، برای خرسای اعصاب و بیخوابی، برای مرد میهن آبادی، برای دختری که آرزو داشت پسر بود، برای زن زندگی آزادی، برای آزادی، برای آزادی، برای آزادی.
Hymn number 1051, We Are, in the TO hymn.
Who are you? The Spirit of Love. So this service is over. We want to thank the extraordinary music that we get from our musicians. Thank you so much, Chloe and Keon. Welcome back, JoAn and David. David, yes. Say it again. Theo, I'm so sorry, Theo. It says here, David. Thought you'd changed your mind. All right. And Ryan, who just, and there are people who get us going technologically that we can see, and many who we don't, but Aubrey is back there. And Liz Fuller, wherever you are, we thank you. And Pam Teplitz, my goodness, they work so hard for us. And Sister Amy Brunel, who is everywhere. She is almost as many places as Linda Van Lichten. almost, but she's got a few years to work up to that. So, and thanks to Linda for all she does, and Greg and the ushers and the coffee makers, and and our sexton who vacuums and sweeps the leaves and the flowers out of the courtyard and makes sure that the building is open and that we can get in the parking structure. So thanks to Tom for that. And I don't have a favorite worship associate, but if I did, didn't she do a fabulous job this morning? It is such an honor and privilege to call this place home. Go now, make home for somewhere else, and make sure that you have taken care of the home in your heart.